Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sales B12, the 10-minute dose of sales you don't want to miss. I'm Caryn Kopp, Chief Door Opener. We are best known for the door opener service, where we get our clients in the door with their prospects for the first meeting. And I'm here with internationally known sales guru, Jack Daly, and we're talking today about what to do about prospect silence. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. As you know, I just came back from a couple of weeks vacation. Even though my LBI visit in New Jersey got rained out for a few days, I still had all of the family together and we had a blast.
The pictures were great. I love seeing all of you together. That was so beautiful. Well, today we're talking about prospect silence. And this is one of the things that everybody I know who has been in sales at some point or another has dealt with prospect silence, including me. So let's just kick it off. Like, what are some of the biggest reasons why prospects go silent in the first place?
So I've got two or three different points that I'd like to kind of go on to. One question that I came up with when you first broached this topic with me was, are you as a seller selling too early? Because if you go too early, people do not want to be sold. So I'm going to shut down. I'm going to go silent if I feel like what you're there for is all about you rather than me. So silence can happen because you went too early to the selling mode. The second thing is that people get tired of me talking about these differences in personality styles, but this comes into play. Some people process what we're saying in a different way. My first wife, Bonnie, before she passed away from cancer, she was an analytical type of person and would often go silent. It didn't have anything to do with having objections or not being interested in moving forward. It was just she's slower to process and would appreciate a few moments of what some of us on the selling side are uncomfortable, which is silence. And so she might be moving right in our direction, and we just got to give her the luxury of that. So, understanding the differences in styles, and it's our job as a seller to mirror our prospect. So to have a sense of that. So even though I'm not analytical, when I was dealing with my wife, Bonnie, I would find a way to be more appreciative of what her world was like, and I would act accordingly. Because I'm going to be the type of style naturally to just rush to the finish line and move this conversation on. But that's not the way it is for everyone else. So be sensitive to the styles. And then the last thing that I would mention here is we as sellers have to be prepared for the call. And part of the preparation here for silence is, do you have your questions ready to get the prospect talking again? Because the best way to get them out of silence is by asking questions. And when you craft those questions that are not, are you ready to buy? But rather something that the person would enjoy answering and feel comfortable with doing. So I'm going to flip that question back to you and say, how about ways to prevent the prospects from going silent in the first place? Then you don't have to deal with everything I just talked about.
Well, that's exactly right. And one of our mantras, and you know this, and people who know me know this, is date and time, date and time, date and time. There is always a date and time for every next step in the sales process. And it's actually setting a date and time is one of the easiest ways to shorten your sales cycle. How's next Thursday at 10? But so many times people don't ask that question. It always amazes me that we have to tell our clients that when we get them these meetings, that don't end the meeting without asking for the next step and getting a date and time. So taking it beyond the meeting, let's say someone asks you for a proposal. Well, what do? It not only asks them a couple of questions that will help you to structure a proposal that they can say yes to, but then ask them for a date and time for which you can review the proposal together. And then you can hear their objections live. And then when you're done with that, ask for a date and time so that when they take it back and they socialize the proposal, that you'll be able to answer those questions as well. So date and time, date and time. If you are in control of the date and time and the next step in the sales process, you don't have to worry about the chase so much in prospects who are talking to you. And then at that moment, it's really important to them what you're talking about. But then when they get off the phone, 10 other priorities take over, and then they put you to the bottom of the list. Setting a date and time will completely help that situation. And then also make sure you're talking to the right person. A lot of times people will start the conversation with a lower level decision maker, and there can be silence sometimes because that person can't sell the idea up the ladder. If you use a top-down approach and start at the top, that process might move faster. And the last one is the message. The person with the best words wins. Does the prospect understand from the prospect's point of view why continuing the process with you is in that person's best interest? Have you explained that clearly? Did you ask for the next step, as I said before? But those are a couple of the things that you can do to prevent prospect silence in the first place. But now,
Caryn, let me cut you off here. We do this a lot on B12, but as I'm listening to you, I'm going, okay, date and time, and call higher up on the decision ladder. And I'm trying to put myself in the seller mode, and I'm going, but it's harder to go higher. I'm hesitant to go higher. It's easier to go lower. So we start kind of doing that in our own minds, and the date and time, there's fear there too by the seller. It's like, well, what if they don't want to commit to a date and time? Well, that's a good thing, because you now need to wrestle that down, right? So any advice on your part in terms of people saying, well, I can talk myself out of date and time, and I can talk myself out of going higher up the chain, because I'm not going to be as successful with either one of those?
yeah, so we call that head trash. And sometimes you have to do head trash removal. That's what we call it, head trash removal. I guess if you're uncomfortable going up the ladder, why is that? Are you concerned that you don't have the chops to have the conversation with the higher level person? Are you concerned that the higher level person is not going to see value in what you're talking about with your products and services? I would suggest, get to the heart of that, because those senior level people, they need to make sure that they're moving in the right direction. And if they have you and your products and services, you are probably in the best position to help them do that. And if you believe that, there's no reason why you can't reach out to that person and say something valuable. The next step with the date and time, that's a really important point that you brought up, Jack, because there are so many people who are in our clients' sales teams that when we get them these big meetings that we get them, we'll have a pretty good first discussion, and then they just don't ask at the end. So why is that? If you're not getting a next step with a date and time at the end of your first meeting, there's one of three things going on there. One is you don't have the right person in the meeting, the right prospect in the meeting in the first place. The other one is that you didn't set up the conversation, the structure of the conversation, so that the prospect wants a next meeting, which is very important to go over that. Are you asking the right questions? How is your path of dialogue? Are you ready for the objections? And then the last part of it is, did you ask? When people don't ask, sometimes it's because they don't know the words to say. If they only had the transition for after they're done with the last objection response, and before they have to say, how's Thursday at 10, there's a transition sentence. So sometimes we'll use something as simple as, I see we're getting to the bottom of the hour and we're going to run out of time. We have more to talk about. Let's take a look next week and pick a date and time to continue our discussion. How's next week for you? Thursday at 10? So you see there's that transition sentence right into the ask, which can help people feel more comfortable.
Hey, listen, I'm probably at the bottom of the food chain in bringing this up, but most of the sellers that are going to tune in and listen to us today are more experienced at dating than I am. But all I can think about is if I were out with someone and I was on a great date and having a great time, all that goes through my mind is, man, it would be great to go out again with this person. But if I don't do date and time, the relationship is going nowhere. And so if you're comfortable in the dating scene and whenever you're out with somebody, you're going, I'm going to go out again, you have to have the courage to go after date and time. It's no different as a seller with a prospect.
Right. Well, that's very important. So aside from date and time, are there any other tips that you have for when prospects go silent? What you recommend people do?
Well, there's a pattern already established between the two of us, and no wonder that we enjoy doing these things together. Look, the key is questions. And the key is preparation before the call, having an understanding of the questions that you're going to have in the engagement. That's really, really important. The best product at the best price with the best service isn't always the one that's chosen. The seller that's chosen is the one that's often the most prepared, the best prepared. So I say the key to successful selling is in the questions, not in the pitching, right? And then the second thing that I would say is, you know what? Anything you want to do well in life, you get to do it well by being practiced. So how often are you practicing the concept of my prospect is going silent? And that's so easy to do with another seller on your team. And even if the sales force is distributed around the nation or around the world, Zoom makes it so easy to just practice going silent. And what do? And then having a debrief. So how much time are you spending as a seller practicing? Let me ask you, what have you found that works when the prospects go silent? Because your whole team deals with that.
Yes, well, it's just a matter of not yet in our world. It's not a matter of it's a no, it's just a not yet kind of thing. But there was a situation that I had many years ago. I never learned this in any of my sales training, where somebody asked me for a proposal. We had this really great rapport. I had the timing down and everything of when he wanted to start. And then he really did go silent. And I tried many different things in order to get him back, like all the tactics that I would suggest someone do. And none of those things were working. And I ended up sending this very heartfelt note, which basically just said to him in the subject line, "Are you okay?" And in the body of the email, it said, "No problem if you're not ready to discuss business right now, but I haven't heard from you. I'm a little worried. Are you okay?" And within 24 hours, I got a note back from him that his son was in the hospital. And that's why he hadn't replied. And he was staying with his son in the hospital. And it was pretty serious too. So one of the things I recommend to people is don't make the assumption that somebody is being rude just because they haven't gotten back to you. Usually when they haven't gotten back to you, it's just because they're busy, they have other things going on, or maybe they didn't understand why talking to you is going to be one of the highest priorities for them, which is all about what you say to them in your messaging. But don't fill in the narrative on your own without the information from the prospect that helps you understand. And then the other thing to avoid is avoid the breakup note. You ever get one of those? "Oh, if I don't hear from you by Thursday, I'll assume you're not interested." Well, that does a really good job breaking up a relationship that's forming. So avoid the breakup note. Last question, Jack, how do leaders make sure that their sellers do what they need to do to avoid prospect silence and then deal with it correctly when it happens? So let's finish up this segment there.
Yeah, so I guess I'll give you three answers and be short because we've covered some of this. One is the playbook. And when you talk about date and time, well, people know me about the importance of having systems and processes in what we call a sales playbook. So identify the questions inside the playbook. Secondly, practice. That's what the best people do in anything in life. And then the third, as a leader of the sales team, you need to be out belly to belly with them on field calls, because there's nothing like the experience of learning live. And seeing what's happening, and joint calls and training calls and coaching calls, all those are different types of field calls. How often are our leaders out in the field belly to belly with their salespeople? That's the question.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
I know that people run into the silent business, but I really think it is what you said, head trash. If you've got the personal confidence in yourself and in your company's product or service, then there's no problem with this silence business. You just need to go after it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a great segment of Sales B12, and I encourage everybody to listen to all of the other Sales B12 episodes. We tend to dive deep in narrow subject areas of challenge within sales and give our combined and collective best tips and ideas. So we will see you again on the next episode of Sales B12.